Welcome to our few moments together on the Parsha. This Shabbos we have the privilege of reading Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim is the first sedra in the Torah that we've read till now that has so many of the 613 mitzvahs, a veritable gan, a garden of mitzvahs that are found in this week's sedra. Our sedra has in it a pasuk in Perek Chav Gimel pasuk Beis, in which it says, Lo sihiya acharei rabim l'ra'os. You do not go after a simple majority to judge badly, so that if there's a 23 Bezdin judge, a Bezdin of Chav Gimel, which is capable of judging capital cases, and the Bezdin decides 12 for severe punishment, even death, and 11 say, no, he should live, and you have a majority for bad, Lo sihiya acharei rabim l'ra'os. You don't judge the negative with only a simple majority, but you have to have a major majority. It has to be a rabbim, so that it has to be at least 13 against 10 to enable to judge negatively. If it's 12 against 11 that the person should live, then we judge positively because we go with the majority for good, but Lo sihiya acharei rabim l'ra'os. The rest of the pasuk says, V'lo sana al riv, don't argue on a questionable issue in order to put yourself with the majority that's deciding on a questionable issue. Don't go just because the majority says we should vote a certain way on a questionable issue, but acharei rabim lahatos. You can only go by the majority. If the majority are wrong, we don't go by the majority. And that's what it means when it says, Lo sa'ana al riv lintos acharei rabim lahatos. Don't go with the majority to make a decision and do something because the majority votes that way. You have to make your mind up. And if you disagree with the majority because they're wrong, you have to state it. And don't say, well, I'm going to go along with the majority. And yet, the pasuk does say, it seems to say, that acharei rabim lahatos, you should go with the majority. And we, in fact, do pasuk that way, that we go by the majority. If there's machlokas with the chachamim and one individual rabbi, we don't go by the individual rabbi. We go by the rabbim. Even Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, always we went by the rabbim. If Beis Shammai was in truth the majority, we would go according to them. There's a whole discussion in Masechta Shabbos about when Beis Shammai was the majority and we went with them. So how do you explain acharei rabim lahatos? And there's a famous question that was asked by the Chassam Sofer and the Kuzari, which went as follows. If we have responsibility to go by the majority, and the majority of the world does not agree with the Jewish way of life, so maybe if we have to go by the majority, we have to follow the non-Jewish way because they are the majority. And after all, we have to go by the majority. Chassam Sofer answers and says, You see, this concept of acharei rabim lahatos, of going after the majority, is only when there's an issue that's of questionable outcome. Something that's not clear as day. If something's as clear as day, it's 12 noon, and the majority say it's night, we're not going to go along with them. It's as clear as day that they're wrong. We don't go by the majority when they're making a mistake. And even if we're the only ones in the world who come out and say the truth, doesn't matter what the rest of the world says. We don't go by the majority when there's an obvious truth to our position. And that's what it means when it says acharei rabim lahatos. You go by the majority when there's a question. But when it comes to whether one should follow the Torah way or not follow the Torah way is so clearly the truth. We don't go by the majority. We don't go by the majority that are walking around screaming their heads off that their way is right just because they're the majority. We don't do that. We don't go after the masses. We don't go by the fools of the majority that decide to do a certain thing when they're wrong. And the Jewish people have a clear truth passed down over 3,300 years from parent to child in the experiential way of the historical record of the Torah being given on Mount Sinai and being passed down and fighting against all that would come against us, even though some went the wrong way. But those are the fools who follow the foolish majority. And we're not supposed to do that. And that's the meaning, says the Chassam Sofer, of Acharei Rabim Lahatos. You go by the majority when there's a question. But when there's absolutely no question, we don't go by the majority. And the Torah is absolutely no question about the historical record and what we have passed down from parent to child over all these centuries. The Torah stands on its own. And Purim is coming up, and we're being Mevorchim Hachodesh, Adar, in which we say, Kimu v'kiblu ha-Yehudim, Kimu ha-Yehudim asher kiblu kvar. The Jewish people accepted what was already well known and accepted by the Jewish people in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu and reiterated at the time of Purim. I want to take this opportunity to wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat Shalom U'Varach, and once again, a Chodesh Tov. We should look forward to only good things, and Acharei Rabim Lahatos. We go by the majority when there's a question, but the Torah, no question about the veracity of that. We follow our way, even though it sticks in the mind of the majority that we're the minority, and we are. And how blessed is it that we are the majority. As Bilam himself said, Hen levadad yishkon. This nation lives alone when it follows the true path of Hashem. Shabbat Shalom U'Mevorach.